Hello. I'm very pleased to contribute together with Craig Atkinson to this closing session of CODIFI on human-centered finance and trade for sustainable development. And I thank very much the Hague Conference on Private International Law for this opportunity. I have to say it is a great pleasure for me as I started my career at the Hague Conference in 2003 as a legal officer, working more particularly on the Hague Securities Convention, in addition to the Evidence Convention, the Choice of Court Convention, and the Service Convention. I'm currently the global manager of the legal regulatory team of a financial institution headquartered in France and operating globally. Our regulatory team has members in France, in various other jurisdictions in the EU, in the UK, in Hong Kong, and in the USA. We monitor and analyze any regulation that impacts the banking and financial activities of our group. It is interesting to note that over the past few years, the two main areas that have been of particular focus are, on the one hand, regulation that relates to the use of digital technologies and digitalization in the institution's operations and the financial services and products it offers. And on the other hand, regulation that relates to sustainability in general and more specifically sustainable finance. And these two pillars are also at the heart of the bank's strategic plan. So for this closing session, we would like to address the connections between sustainability, finance and technologies, and the role of regulation. But first, it is important to mention that sustainability is now at the heart of everything we do. The Sustainable Development Goals, so-called SDGs, that were adopted in 2015 by the United Nations, were a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure all people enjoy peace and prosperity. And when UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres raised his Cadre for Humanity in August 2021, this was on the basis of irrefutable evidence that greenhouse gas emissions are choking our planet and placing billions of people in danger. So in this context, it is clear that financial institutions have a role to play. The transition towards a more sustainable economy requires billions in investments, and public funding will not be sufficient. There are different definitions of sustainable finance. In a nutshell, it involves the mobilization of private capital to support sustainable growth and a stable financial system. So concretely, the implications could be presented as twofold. Firstly, identifying, preventing and managing the potential negative impacts of an investment or a financing activity on ESG areas, such as the environment or human rights. And secondly, having a positive impact through investing in or financing economic activities that contribute to sustainable development. More broadly speaking, to be sustainable, financial institutions need to ensure ESG considerations are embedded in all their processes and decision-making. So when looking at regulations, the state of emergency we are facing explains the shift we have observed in the way sustainability is regulated. And in this respect, what we can say is that there are common features between regulations on technology and regulations on sustainability matters, including the fact that they both constitute new areas of expertise. They are also both still under development. They both touch on a wide range of sectors and activities, and we see their implications in our daily life. Last but not least, we note that technology and sustainability both trigger a wave of regulations which demonstrates the importance of law. Nevertheless, we also can say that regulations seek different objectives. In the digital space, regulation is necessary to govern, organize, ensure legal certainty and consumer protection, and guarantee the integrity of the markets on a level playing field. At the same time, there is also the need to have the possibility to use sandboxes to foster innovation while mitigating the related risk. It is a difficult balance to achieve. When talking about sustainability, Regulation is also important to protect consumers and ensure legal certainty, but the big difference is that regulation or laws are also seen as a tool to achieve sustainable development. Sustainability is an overarching goal that should drive all that we do, while digital technologies should rather be seen as a means to accomplish our objectives, and at the same time being themselves energy efficient. Of course, this means that digital resources and innovative solutions can and should be used to ensure sustainable development. So the question of whether digitalization can be a lever to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, is an important one. According to the UN's Secretary General report on Roadmap for Digital Cooperation dated 2020, the recent advances in technology offer groundbreaking opportunities to monitor and protect the environment, as well as overall planetary health. By harnessing them appropriately, the digital revolution can be steered to combat climate change and advance global sustainability, environmental stewardship, and human well-being. So applied to the banking and financial sector, digitalization is not new, but is still growing, and we are still exploring the opportunities and risks. Digital finance includes a broad range of technological developments, such as big data, AI, mobile platforms, DLT, such as blockchains, and the Internet of Things. So few examples. One area where digitalization may helpfully support sustainable development goals is with respect to ESG data. ESG data are non-financial data relating to environmental, social, and governance matters, in particular regarding companies. The availability, quality, and proper treatment of ESG data is indeed crucial to achieve sustainable development goals. Today, the lack of data is a major issue. Information is not easily available and cannot always be verified. As an example, ESG data is needed to assess the sustainability of a company or an economic activity or project, and consequently of an investment in that company, activity, or project, but also to ensure the investment matches the sustainability preferences of the investors. Technologies can help reduce such costs, better inform investors, label products, and develop sustainability rating methodologies, for instance. Another example with AI. AI technology has numerous applications. It can be a helpful tool to improve efficiency and exhaustivity of ESG assessments and risk management. AI can predict data when it is not available, search for data on a large scale, simulate the impact of ESG drivers, and project future trends. One other interesting development relates, for instance, to creditworthiness scoring, where AI may help fostering the process, ensuring objective and homogeneous decision-making. However, such goals can only be achieved if we ensure an algorithm's fairness and ethics. The EU draft regulation on artificial intelligence indeed acknowledges that AI systems used for such purposes may be considered as high risk, as they may lead to discrimination or even create new forms of discriminatory impacts. We could also mention digital tools as a support to greater financial inclusion by enabling modern financial services to be more widely accessed and utilized, thus contributing to SDG 8.10. Digital financial inclusion involves the deployment of digital means to reach currently financially excluded and underserved populations with a range of formal financial services suited to their needs, such as payments, savings, using a mobile phone, or other digital technology. Having access to banking services is a way to promote economic empowerment, but also reduce the risk of loss or theft. As enablers, technologies can help bridge the gap between developed and developing countries, tackle global challenges such as poverty, hunger, and climate change, to name a few, and accelerate human well-being. We've seen, for instance, the positive impacts of the development of mobile payments in some countries where financial inclusion was less developed. Digital finance may also offer new opportunities to finance sustainable projects. We have, for instance, recently seen in France a first experiment for an ESG tokenized bond via a blockchain for a solar energy project financing. Here, the tokenization offers broader opportunities for smaller assets or projects that would not be funded otherwise. And we know that in the field of renewable energy, almost half of the financing needs will relate to smaller projects, which are currently underserved. Transactions based on tokenized assets have the potential to bridge the size gap between those projects and the scale expected by investors. Additionally, both the bond term sheet and ESG data are embedded in the token, a strong improvement in terms of investors being able to verify ESG impacts. Finally, in the real economy sphere, but also useful for sustainable finance, monitoring and controlling ESG performance of supply chains might also be another use case where blockchain can help banks and the companies they finance to access more detailed and reliable information, publicly or privately available, about the social and environmental impact of their entire supply chains. Indeed, regulators expect increased scrutiny from companies to identify, prevent, and mitigate potential negative impacts that may occur through the supply chain. In support of this, we can mention the OECD guidelines on multinational enterprises, but also the French Law on Duty of Care, and the UK and Australian Modern Slavery Acts, and the forthcoming EU Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. So some factors to consider. The use of certain technologies may also have unintended ESG consequences. If not appropriately managed, such consequences could jeopardize targeted impacts. Sustainability requires considerations of all ESG factors when assessing the impact of a tool, a process, an activity, a service, or product. That means, for instance, that the environmental objective of a green product would not be sufficient to qualify as sustainable if it appears that it significantly harms another factor by using modern slavery or introducing discriminatory practices, for instance. Among these key considerations, we could mention, for instance, the preservation of financial stability and market integrity, as well as consumer protection. The risk of criminal activities such as anti-money laundering may indeed be increased by the introduction of non-regulated firms deploying new technologies, or from the decentralized nature of some ledgers, depending on the model used. Also, protecting consumers against the risk of financial loss or threats to their privacy. Ensuring that the development of new technologies does not increase inequalities towards certain populations. And finally, measuring the overall environmental impact of the use of technologies, notably in relation to the emissions associated with their use and the type of energy used. The EU draft regulation on markets in crypto assets, MiCAR, mentions the environmental impacts of crypto assets, for instance, and more particularly the use of the proof of work consensus mechanism in terms of CO2 emissions, energy consumptions, and depletion of real resources. While this point is subject to debate for several reasons, ongoing work on alternative validation systems, such as the proof of stake mechanism, may address this issue in the future. And on the sustainable finance front, the progress made those past few years to regulate sustainable finance has been significant, in particular in the EU, but also in APAC jurisdictions. Regulation will help mitigate the risk of ESG greenwashing, which could not only divert capital flows from real sustainable activities, but also affect investors' confidence. Nevertheless, regulations, whether at local or regional levels, are sometimes complex and not yet fully complete. And there is still a lot to do towards more harmonization globally to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Cross-border cooperation is essential in this respect. To conclude, while we see some opportunities for digitalization to help accelerate sustainable development goals in finance, there are also significant risks that need to be addressed. Risks are very different depending on their contemplated technology. The cross-border aspect of most of the technologies at stake also emphasizes the crucial need for clear conflict of law rules. Of course, this is also very important given the cross-border nature of finance and the fact that ESG factors only make sense when they are assessed globally, for instance, when evaluating supply chains. Overall, adopting common minimum standards as well as common objectives is key. However, sustainability is a complex matter. It is also necessary to recognize differences between jurisdictions, depending on their economic and social development, as well as levels of responsibility when talking about climate change. I strongly believe that private international law principles may help to ensure an appropriate level of environmental and social justice. Thank you very much for your attention.